All right. I'm not sure what piece of the content is missing, so I am going to go ahead and continue with the content. Smile. Yes. Are we ready to learn more about AWS today? Are we? Yes. All right. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the biggest mistake that you both have encountered as interviewer for AWS.
Probably one of the biggest things I hear is people who tell me what they think I want to hear. Is what I'm really looking for is, what did you do, right? Because we're looking for data points, and it's okay to brag about yourself. Amazonians are typically humble, but in the interview process, we want you to brag. You have full permission to brag about what you did. A lot of people are reluctant to talk about their accomplishments. It's kind of embarrassing, maybe, I don't know. But in the interview, I want you to do that, and I want you to be data centric. Tell me the statistics, tell me the facts and figures, because those are the kinds of things that are meaningful when we go through the debrief process, and we can talk about the impact of what you did.
Excellent. What about you, Victoria? What is the biggest mistake that you have heard?
Some people think that we're trying to trap them with our questions. So we would like all of you to succeed, because then it's going to just make our interview process much easier, right? Everybody who comes will be hired, and we don't have to interview. So what I noticed, there were a couple of times where I felt that candidates were trying to guess which leadership principles being asked, because they want to highlight that they exhibit this leadership principle. And that's not what we really trying to do. So please don't try to think about what leadership principle is being asked.
Yes, thank you. It drives me absolutely crazy, Victoria. Everyone says I literally spend hours, a few times a week, hours, doing nothing but to just read LinkedIn messages, and they're all the same. Holly, how do I know what probing question they will ask? My recruiter didn't really tell me what leadership principle to focus on. Can you let me know what a solution architect, what LP should I study? You should study your background and make sure that you're able to have a lot of example how you demonstrate delivering results. You don't have to spend your time in wondering what LP they're going to ask, what the bar raiser thinks about you, what your hiring manager thinks about you when the cow comes home for you. No, none of that. Focus on yourself, because at the end of your day, your story is really gold. The audience love to ask, well, Holly, can you give me an example of, for example, business analyst, engineer, TPM, and SA? It really doesn't matter what position you are prepping for at the end of the day. It's about how well you know your background and what was your added value, right? And no one's going to write your answer for you because they're not you. They don't know what you have accomplished.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Holly. And it comes back to the question that you asked about what are the mistakes I've seen. One of the mistakes is not preparing. And by preparing, what I mean is spending time to think about the stories that you can tell about your career. What have you done? And how can you put that into a story form? And it's the person who's conducting the interview, it's their job to guide you while you're answering that to get the whatever data they need for whatever LP they're interviewing you about. You don't have to worry about what the LPs are, but you should think deeply about the stories that you can tell.
Yep, I agree. Anything else you wanted to add when it comes to preparation and how critical it is, Victoria?
Another thing, it's okay if you don't know answer. I would say we are not trying to expect everyone to know everything, because the technical interview, we all have our strengths, we have our weaknesses. And if you don't know something, it's okay to say, I don't know. It's actually much worse if you try to guess and you try to sound confident and provide wrong answer. Well, then this just sends a wrong message, and now you break trust, right? I also had candidates that tried to Google answers. That's definitely lowering bar for earned
right.
trust.
You can tell when someone tried to Google it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can see how they start looking at on the side or the keyboard out. So this immediately just failed interview. Where if you just told me I don't know this, and that's fine. Okay, next topic.
I think a lot of the folks are so anxious because everyone wants to work for. Who here wants to work for AWS? Give me a hand. Hands up. Okay, it should be 100% of the people who's watching right now. It's just so daunting to me when I ask I call them member, even if they're clients. I would say, wait, you failed your interview 6 times. Why do you keep on reapplying to the job and re-interviewing for the same role but different team? You realize that the entire Amazon group of companies all know your name now, and you're in their system, their database forever. Even if they migrate to a different CRM system or ATS system, your interview feedback will always stay alive in there. And they will say, Holly, I've been been unemployed. I was affected by the pandemic. Amazon came. It's Amazon. I tried so hard. It took me 2 years to get an interview, but you failed 3 times. So let's just pause. I wish I have a beep button here somewhere. Why don't you try to figure out what the gap is and try to bridge the gap? If you don't know, I even made a playlist, by the way, guys, of failed Amazon attempt. That's how passionate I am to stop you from re-interviewing. 1, 2, 3, but 6 times? Come on, guys, right? It's very simple for you to know where you have failed. You kind of remember the type of question that's being asked, right? If you look at the camera right here, if they're looking at you, they seem a little bored. You didn't make it. If your interview end in 20 minutes, you also did not make it, right? You can kind of tell if the interviewer is very engaging, if they show excitement, right? In the end, the biggest tip I can give you guys is if you sense hesitation, and Elvis, you mentioned brag a little bit. If you've done your job, bragging meaning being confident in showing off your work, but don't be arrogant. Just brag a little, show confidence. If you think about it, if you've done a good job, truly the best that you could, ask the hiring manager like Elvis or Victoria. Did I do a good job in answering all your questions? Look at them dead in the eye. Even if you didn't, they love that stuff. They love it. I'm like, wow, this person is wrong and they're owning it that they're wrong. They don't make any sense to me. But yes, I want to give them a chance because I feel like they can really roll up their sleeve and figure it out on their own. People at Amazon and all these FANG companies, they don't hire you based on exactly the type of experience you have, specifically AWS. Because if you look at I don't know, I make myself sound a little old here. Ever since back in like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it was all VMware. You all remember that? You all know what I'm talking about? It was all virtual machine, all VMware. Amazon's not even in the picture, right? But about 10 plus years ago, it was all about AWS. Everyone and their mom and cousins want to work for it. But then the pandemic hit. And when 2020 hit, it was very clear that Amazon was the only company that was hiring, which is why the audience from this channel wants more of AWS. With that said, I want to focus our energy on technical questions. Dun, dun, dun.
I want to add something. We said about bragging, and perhaps audience might be like, "What do you mean by bragging?" So I came from a very team-driven culture, and for me, it was hard to say "I," even if it was "I." So I used a lot of the time "we," and then when you answer during interview and say "we," then for interviewer it's not clear. Well, what was your part? So during interview, just make sure that maybe you don't do it in your company, but during interview, it's really important to really show and say, this is what I did, and use a lot I rather than we.
Yep. And it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, especially a different culture. I see you guys, right? Especially in the Asian culture. I can say that because I am one. It is rude if we say I. It's rude if we just get straight down to business, but that's how Amazon work. They're not rude because they're so busy in servicing and extremely obsessed with their customer like you and I, where they're always on a time crunch. Things get released every single day. So they don't have time to grab some tea or let's grab some dinner or some dim sum and then talk business. It's more of let's work hard first and then we'll play harder by celebrating our success, not celebrate our success before we talk about business. So I think that's a big difference between a different culture. And a lot of folks ask me that. I know in my mock interview weekly sections, a lot of them, even from the different culture like Dubai, for example, and not just Southeast Asia, right? It is part of the ethic to just have tea with you, get to know you, and then conduct business with you. So the Amazon mentality is nothing like that. It's more of what do you bring on the table? Let's talk about how great your ideas are in helping us plan, strategize, and execute ship product to the market. If you can help me generate $1 billion, I'm all ears on you, and let's go grab a drink later. So that's what I love about Amazon. And for all of you guys who's been following me for a while, I'm so glad Elvis and Victoria is here today. I get, by the way, if you have complained about your Amazon shipping delay, please don't come to me. This is not appropriate. This is not the right time. They come to me for everything, right? And I get a lot of questions. I want to talk about the technical interview type of questions. And then I want to talk about what everyone has been asking me, the culture at Amazon, because I'm getting a lot of those questions. I'm with you, Elvis and Victoria. I love my work at Amazon. There's not a single day that I would complain. Not the hours, not what I do, but I want to hear about what really is the tech bar and what makes you stick around at Amazon doing what you do. Victoria, you're there for 1.5 years now, nearly 2 years?
1.5 years, yes.
1.5, yeah. I was actually reading reading a lot of YouTube comments last night to get me hyped up for today, and I knew those questions were coming. Quite a few of them are asking, well, my Amazonian friends left less than 2 years and it's a toxic environment. Listen, y'all, okay? Amazon, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, all the company, there's a reason why people leave. Just because someone leave in less than 2 years does not mean what toxic is for them is toxic for you. Okay? It's not the same page. Go ahead, Victoria.
Yeah, so I'll start with addressing your first question about technical bar. So one of the things that we ask is to pick a solution that you design and walk us end to end through it. And then we will ask about the questions like, how did you make sure that this solution is scalable? How did you make sure the solution is secure? And we will ask to provide information about how you made the technical decisions and some of the trade-offs and some of the alternatives that you consider. And also maybe when we work with our customers, we have to influence them, right? So you can come and propose a solution, but then how did you make everyone on board with your proposal? So that's in terms of technical questions and something that you can expect during solutions architect interviews. Now, if you ask it, what I like and, why am I at Amazon? Honestly, I love my role. I was talking to Elvis about this. I said, when I interviewed at Amazon, I kind of thought that I know what solutions architect role that is, but I really didn't understand what the difference between partner SA and SA. And now that I came as a partner SA, I absolutely love what I do. So there are 3 things that I love about it. So number 1 is building. So I help partners to build products and services on AWS. And this helps me to drive innovation, not only with AWS, but drives innovation with partners. And because, partners, they can be quite demanding, then I come back to our service team and say, well, this partner saying that we should implement this and this. So this now drives innovation also on AWS side. Having this technical hands-on working and building is something that really excites me. The second thing that I love teaching, and you can see it from my social media. I love talking about technologies and explaining it to others, and that's also solutions architect role. Let's say when I work with a customer or with a partner, I have to first enable them to understand how they can use particular service. I might do a deep dive. I might organize workshops where they engineers will do some hands-on. So that's enable part. And the last thing, what we're actually doing now is more evangelizing AWS, evangelizing our partner solutions, so advocating, so writing blog posts, participating in AWS events or industry events, and presenting to a broader group the solutions that you develop is another thing that we do at Amazon. So build, enable, and advocate or evangelize. Those are the 3 things that are quite unique about our role, because, you can get a very technical role, but then you will not get the customer-facing experience, or you might get a trainer role, but then you will not be actually driving innovation. So our role is quite unique.
Let's talk a little bit about your hiring bar and what you're looking for as a hiring leader for SA, for senior SA, Elvis.
Yeah, I think you had a question earlier about, what's the level 7 versus level 6.
Level 6, yep.
When I interviewed, I didn't even know there were levels. The short answer is just the level of influence that we expect from a level 7 is bigger. For the technical bar for, say, a level 6, so a level 7 would be a principal solution architect. Level 6 would be a senior solution architect. The technical bar for level 6 is still pretty high, right? I had 20 years of experience before I came in as a level 6 solution architect. And, that spanned both hardware and software companies. The biggest thing for me is that ability to problem solve and the ability to have some technical foundation that you can leverage. And that means having depth in a few areas and having a breadth that's going to help you understand how the impact of technology can be applied to business. Victoria also touched on the technical aspect of the role is not sufficient. Being technical is one aspect of the role. We also need people who can communicate very well, who are able to be influential with people at different levels of an organization. You could be talking to a developer, you could be talking to a board member. And
Yep. I love what you said about the hiring bar at level 6. I had 15 years experience when I first joined Amazon. 15 experience or so. I was a level 6. Just because someone has 10 years, 20 years does not make them a director or level 7. Most people retire at level 7 because the bar, and when I say bar, let me rephrase, the scope and the scale at Amazon is extremely high. It's AWS, okay? If AWS ever goes down, which for the first time I think was around the pandemic, because it's just so much traffic, and you are responsible for that as part of that huge organization, so things are going to be in speed of lightning. So that's what you guys are getting into. As much as I'm trying to scare people off on how fast-paced the Amazon culture is, look at this, they're loving it. They are loving this. That reminds me about your hiring bar. I have a question. I want to go for Amazon, but my background is in economics and med tech segment. Is it a roadblock if the experience is not directly from cloud field?
I can answer this. Amazon's been doing this for quite a few years, but our first service came out in 2006, but the cloud is still relatively new. And so the more important thing is your experience in business. We can teach you the cloud aspects, but you need to bring your expertise. And, we've got people that are focused, for example, on healthcare and life sciences. That might be, they're doing business development in healthcare and life sciences. That's seems like a good fit.
A lot of people ask about the LinkedIn profile, the LinkedIn update that we were just talking about. I'm just scanning through the chat as we're speaking here to be relevant to the audience. All of us say the same thing. Your LinkedIn profile, we say LinkedIn, but it's really about your branding. It's about how well you know your background. What I teach, there's no secret sauce here. I'm giving it to you guys. This is free content, by the way. If your achievement doesn't make sense to the viewer, like everyone who's watching here, myself, Elvis, and Victoria, you're going to struggle when it comes time for you to provide those answers. And I talk about the STAR method a lot. It's not an Amazon way. It's just a way to help you be very concise. You have to have a brand because everyone is looking at your brand. And even when you're interviewing for one team at Amazon, you better bet that now you have Amazon's attention. I know there's quite a few questions about how do I get the Amazon's recruiter attention. It's your LinkedIn profile. Okay?
And your network.
And your network. Yep. I'm so glad you brought it up. Thank you for being the bad guy. I'll be a bad girl alongside with you, Elvis. If you don't have followers on your LinkedIn profile, or if you have an empty LinkedIn profile, I won't add you to my network because LinkedIn only accepts like XYZ number. I can't remember. Was it 30,000 or 50,000?
Yeah.
I can't remember. I think it was 30. Yeah?
Yeah,
30, which is, it's not a whole lot. So let's just say that once you reach 30,000, I have to go back and start deleting people. I don't want to do, you don't delete your network. So working professionals are very cautious in who they add into the network, and you want to start building your network now. Okay. Don't be afraid to reach out, starting with the community that you want to follow. In this case, AWS. I actually have an entire playlist on LinkedIn networking and job search tool. Go check that out. And let's talk a little bit about the Amazon leadership principle. Everybody asked me this. What are the must-have LP for senior SA? That's a trick question.
It depends on the role.
Yes.
Right? Different roles have different LPs that are going to be important for the role. So for example, one of the LPs that I like to focus on for the solution architect role is learn and be curious. The logic behind that, the reason for that is because, we have over 200 services now, right? And each one of those services is growing in their features and the ways that you can use those. And we're going to add to that, right? 200 is not the end. So you need to be able to ingest and synthesize data from a lot of different places. So learn and be curious is really helpful. The curiosity, I find, is also an important aspect because if you're truly passionate and interested in the space, you're going to learn more quickly than somebody who's, dispassionate and having to force themselves to study.
Victoria, do you have anything to add on what are the most important LP for SA?
Yeah, in my opinion, one of the most important one is earn trust, because you can be amazing technical specialist and you can come up with amazing solutions that sounds good, prove. But if you cannot convince and build trust with your customers and partners, then this work is not going to go anywhere. So for me, earning trust, whether it's with your colleagues, with service teams, sometimes we have to influence them as well, and with your partners and customers is really critical to our role.
One of the very first questions that I asked for all of the senior SA is walk me through the most difficult solution that you were able to help your customer resolve. And what was the issue that you're trying to resolve?
Yeah, I want to talk about the STAR format for a second. Like I said, preparation is really important. And if you think about the stories, like what's the most difficult technical challenge that you solve, that's a good story that you can tell. I don't expect the candidate to give me that answer in a STAR format, but I want them to think about it because it will help make their answer more concise. We only have 45 or 60 minutes for this interview, and we can't take that much time to talk about each one of the questions. So the more that you're able to condense the data into a short answer, the more data we can get through in that time, and the more data points I'll have in order to make that hiring decision.
Yep.
So think about it in terms of STAR format, but I'm not expecting you to regurgitate that in STAR format when we're talking about it.
Yeah, because if you guys say, my situation, my task, my result, or one of the things that I tell my members not to do is to try too hard. For example, I like to dive deep to think big in order for me to, I'm like, no, stop. It's just trying too hard where the interviewer is not getting to know you. It seems like you're memorizing a Bible. Please do not do that. Seriously, I'm like, stop, that's trying way too hard. I have a loop interviewing for an SDM role. SDM, by the way, is Software Development Manager. Can I introduce more than one LP in my answer? This is not just an SDM, even SA or any role. So the question is, I'm just going to throw it back to the Amazonians here. Can you have more than one LP in an answer?
Victoria?
Yeah. So to me, the most important is what we already said. It's not about that you introduce leadership principles, that you provide answer. And when candidates provide an answer, sometimes it's true that you might see, this candidate, let's say, was learn and be curious, but he also delivered results. So in my interview feedback, I will actually go and mark 2 leadership principles. If I ask it, a question and the candidate didn't answer at all and provided me some other amazing stories about them, it's just not going to go anywhere. So as we said, it's really important to answer a question, and then don't worry about leadership principles because it will be on your interviewers to evaluate this.
Yep, excellent. Elvis, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of times it's also reading between the lines. A leadership principle question about think big is very similar to a leadership principle about invent and simplify.
Yep.
So don't try and guess. Just tell us a story.
Yep.
You don't have to tell us, hey, I think
you.
big. You don't have to tell us I invented and simplified. Just tell us a story. And if we don't get the information we're needing in order to move forward, we'll ask the question again. Or we'll ask you another question. So think about the answers that you want to, and your work history. And that's the best thing that you can do to prepare.
So if you are able to keep hiring manager like Elvis and someone who's very senior in her role like Victoria interested for a full minute or 5 minutes, go on ahead and do it. But are you going to remember every single thing of what you've done? You're going to go into tangent, right? Which is why keeping your answer short, sweet, to the point will keep them engaged. This is a question about how long should your initial response be? A, 5 to 7 minutes using the STAR method. By the way, if you're going to talk 5 to 7 minutes, that's a white paper talk. B, 1 to 2 minute STAR format. Elvis and then Victoria, how do you think the initial response length is?
The shorter your response, right, especially if it's got a bunch of data in it, then I can go back and I can ask you a follow-up question and we can talk about it more. But me listening to a monologue that's, 5 or 10 minutes long, it's not that helpful because you're probably not telling me the things that I actually need to know in order to make the hiring decision. So condense your answer, give it to me really quick, and then let's dive in and we can peel that onion, because that's what we end up doing, right? Is no matter how long your answer is, I'm going to have to ask you more questions. So just condense it. Like you said, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes max.
I'm going to go ahead and strong hire Elvis here.
Thank you.
I'm kidding.
I agree with you, because the shorter it is, the better it is. However, you do have to provide enough data. So if we take, let's say, situation, you can explain the situation and what actions you took to resolve the situation, another 2 to 3 sentences, and then your results, with, if you could provide some data in terms of numbers and impact, that's even better. And then it will be up to us to ask a follow-up question. So don't try to provide all of the details in your answers, because we will ask for those details later.
Mhm.
So provide initial answer, and then we will dive and talk about it more.
I wanted to really address the number one biggest questions I have is, Holly, I'm so scared. How do I know who's the bar racer? I had so many bar racer in my YouTube channel as guests, director level, L7 level, L6 level, and they themselves say the same thing. Before they become the bar racer, they're just like you and I, who interviewed at Amazon, get the job, and then did a very good job interviewing. Then they get nominated to be a BR, right? So when you interview Victoria, do you care who the bar racer is? And do you know who the bar racer is during your loop interview?
No, I didn't know who is my bar raiser. And I don't really think that it's that important, because a bar raiser is going to evaluate you against the same leadership principles, right? It's just they have more experience, and therefore their opinion have a higher priority, right, or more impact, because they ultimately can make this decision for or on behalf of the team. But you should not be worried so much about who's your bar raiser, because it's the same type of interview. You're going to be asked the same type of questions, and your answers shouldn't change whether you know if it's a bar raiser or if it's a not bar raiser.
What about you, Elvis?
So I agree. You're not going to know who the bar raiser is. And frankly, you shouldn't care, right? Your job is to tell us the stories and be as factual as you can and be as authentic as you can, and regardless of who you're talking to. I mean, the bar raiser is an internal process to make sure that the people who are participating in the loop are hitting the bar, right? It's not about the candidate. It's about the other people on the interview loop.
Let's focus a little bit more on the senior SA. Does it give any advantage when it comes to a recruiting process? Do they have the online assessment for the SA now? I heard that a lot of things are changed. I'm also hearing a little bit inconsistency. Some team have an online assessment or exercise, and some team doesn't.
In the United States, we no longer use the assessment tool. I ran a team in EMEA for the last few years, and we did use it in EMEA, but for the US, doesn't apply.
Okay, I think it's case by case as well, but a lot of you guys want to know, how long is the Amazon interview process at AWS? What's going to happen after my phone screen, the recruiter ghosted me, or I'm waiting for my pending on-site schedule? All of that stuff are driven by your recruiter in managing the hiring team. A lot of the time, it's not really the recruiter's fault. The recruiter's job is not just recruiting great talent for for companies like an Amazon, but also making sure, hey, Elvis, by the way, you're the hiring manager on this. Let's talk about competency, because we have to schedule the loop. The clock is ticking here. The candidate's not going to be available for very long. Hey, Victoria, by the way, we want you to be on this loop. Here's your competency. And to really delegate, I want to share that story a little bit, how important the recruiter role is, because so many of you guys, if not all of you, only cares about the Amazon BR. You should care about the entire interview loop and everyone who's involved in there. Okay.
One other thing about that, right? We could go through a full phone screen and a full loop, and you may not hear for a while. And that can be very challenging. I know and it could be a simple reason, right? Maybe one of the people that was part of your loop is out of the office, and we need that person's feedback in order to finish the debrief. So if you're in that situation, I urge you to reach out to your recruiter. They can give you the details around, what's happening and what time frame you should expect to hear back from us.
What about for more junior solution architect? What leadership principles should they be focusing focusing on? You caught him off guard. He's pausing for you here.
I mean, the answer is, yeah, I don't think there's a good answer, honestly.
Yep.
So let me answer this question in a different way. There are leadership principles that are easy for us to teach. So things like customer obsession are easy to teach. There are other leadership principles, things like think big or are right a lot, that are much more difficult to teach. Regardless of whether it's a junior position or not, having expertise in some leadership principles, like I was talking about, learn and be curious earlier, that passion and that curiosity and, your skill set in being able to learn, those are things that you can work on. Your skill set around thinking big and innovation, those are important, right? At any level in the company. That's one way to think about it. The other thing I would say that's not an LP, but I mentioned it earlier, we like to hire people who are builders. So go and build things. Come and show us what you built. Participate in the AWS community. I think that's a great way to show your interest and your skill set, is to just go and build things.
Yeah, build things and then maybe create an article and write about what you build and share your knowledge and post it on LinkedIn so your recruiters can find you.
What are the key LPs for technical sourcer L5 positions? I'm going to take this from recruiting background. To get a job at Amazon, I think, again, my own opinion, Amazon has the highest bar when it comes to what are you actually bringing on the table, which is smart, your ability to adapt, your ability to just builder. Sourcers, meaning that these are the sourcers and recruiters are similar but yet different. They're what is called front end, okay? Technical sourcer will go on where? LinkedIn. That's why you got to up that profile if you want to get the recruiter's attention. Sourcers look at keywords and they can read a profile in no more than 10 seconds. I take 5 seconds. Bottom up, all the way up, down. If I don't understand it, move on. Because there's so many applicants to look at, they have no time. So you need to be able to tell me and strategize, what is your sourcing strategy? What do you do on LinkedIn when you search on LinkedIn? Amazon is a very data heavy company. So if you're interviewing for like a recruiting role, you have to bring a lot of data and matrix. How many roles did you fill? What is your offer accept ratio? So on and so forth. Hopefully that answers your questions. Valentin says, after passing SA Associate certificate, how important is it to have a portfolio to build it?
Yeah, once again, we don't expect AWS experience. It's a nice to have. We're looking at your entire skill set. Like I said, the technical depth and breadth, the soft skills, public speaking, persuasion, your ability to write and communicate, all of those problem solving skills, all those things come into are variables that we consider when we're looking at a candidate.
Do you have something to add, Victoria?
If you don't have experience in building, so creating this portfolio, creating the small projects and actually sharpening your hands-on skills, I think is very important. So when I interviewed for Amazon, I didn't have as many Amazon projects, but AWS projects. So I talked about my other projects, but I really wanted to highlight about things that I did just because I was, passionate and I learned. So I talked about how one time I set up a contact center or how I built Alexa game for my kids. So those are really good examples, and they also highlight your passion, your learn and be curious, right? Your sense of ownership. So if you feel that you are lacking hands-on skills, it might be not a bad idea to actually go and build some personal projects for yourself.
This is actually a very common question that I get internationally as well. And the question is basically struggling to find specific AWS Spain, such as role details, team specific other than job descriptions. I've tried Google. If you read the job description, Amazon is the one company I talk about job description in my regular live stream. They don't play around. Every single thing in the job description, you are absolutely going to perform and probably 100% more of something different, because Amazon is a culture that are just moving around so quickly and things changes pretty often. And please do jump in and smack me around, correct me if I'm wrong, Elvis. Victoria.
I think you're totally right. And the job description is the amount of depth in the job description will be dependent on how much time the hiring manager spent on that particular job, that particular role. You may not get a good job description. It may be fairly generic. That being said, you can, the best thing you can do is just use your network, right? Connect to people on LinkedIn. Do some Google searches, right? On what's this particular role We have a ton of videos on what does a solution architect do. Just take a look at stuff like that and you'll get an idea for the role. But the best thing is, I think, work that network and join a community group. Go to an AWS summit. Those are the things where you meet Amazonians face to face or in forum, but that's where you're going to get better depth, probably what you're going to see in the job description.
Boomerang. A boomerang is a phrase that Amazonian needs if you leave Amazon and come back. Oh, they call it return to work. Do you have any tips to prepare for a boomerang loop interview that may be different than regular loop? For me, I would say no, but I think the bar is a little bit higher because the number one question everybody is going to ask you, why are you coming back and why did you leave?
I agree with that. There's nothing wrong with being a boomerang, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people leave and want to try something else. They go to work at a startup, or maybe they had some personal issue that made them leave. Had to care for a family member or something like that. Doesn't really matter. What matters is who are you now, and what do you bring? What do you bring to the table? And all the other tips we've talked about today are absolutely relevant.
Yep, I think so too. To wrap this up, how do you guys answer the questions? I don't understand, why is Amazon so toxic to work at, and why are there so many medias about this? And I quit my job as an operation manager, an area manager at a warehouse. I'm on my feet all day long and I absolutely hate it. Like that.
I think one of the reasons why you might get this kind of answers, and I was almost very close to burnout at the end of last year, and I think it's just because of, so Amazon has a lot of things, right? We can drive so many things, and you have ownership, you have bias for action, right? So you have all of the things that you can drive and you can decide on what you're going to do. And we talk about this, you are not limited to kind of your in traditional company to your tasks and responsibilities, right? In Amazon, it's about making impact, and we have big goals, right? We have think big. So what can happen that you set up those goals to think big and deliver results, that you will work yourself, to basically, let's say 12 hours or 80-hour a week. Mm-hmm. But it's on you to put these limits and to put a border and say, okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm working, let's say from 8 to 5. And after this, that's it. I'm closing my laptop and I'm being with my family. So Amazon will take as much time as you are willing to give. And it's up to you to draw this borderline.
So what I'm hearing, Victoria, is that you love what you do so much, you don't know when to draw the line.
Exactly. That, you just might carry on. You start building things and, the last thing you notice, oh, it's already midnight. How did this happen? Well, because you were so passionately doing something.
Yeah, I love that answer. Thanks, Victoria. And you're 100%, 110% correct. The other answer that I would give, Holly, is, look, I've worked here for, it'll be 9 years in July. That is twice as long.
Nearly a decade.
Thank you. This is twice as long as I've worked anywhere else in my entire career. And the only reason is because it's an awesome place to work and our culture is great. There's going to be an occasional bad story in any company. The AWS experience for me has been the best place I've worked in my entire career.
And now you know the best team in Amazon. So please reach out to us and apply because we have open roles.
Yeah. I mean, Amazon is always hiring, specifically AWS guys. That's why I'm begging all of you guys to cut it out. Stop taking interviews when you're not ready. It's not going anywhere. AWS is not going anywhere. Okay. The one thing I do want everyone to be mindful of as you are reaching out to Viktoria and Elvis and asking them for open position, please understand that they probably will get thousands of people reaching out to them. So here's the biggest tip I have for you. When you reach out to them, don't ask them all the same questions. Help them save time in getting back to you quicker by saying, I'm interested in this position, but tell them what is the most innovative thing that you have ever built as a solution architect. That's it. Just one thing. So when you are reaching out to them, simply just say, by the way, here's how I add value. This is the biggest thing I've ever built as a solution architect, as an infrastructure network engineer, whatever that may be. Just tell them that one thing. So that's going to save them time in opening your email, going to your LinkedIn. As I mentioned, human attention span is 5 to 10 seconds. So I ask that everyone be very, very mindful. Attach your resume, but overall, very briefly, what have you delivered relating to the SA role? Do not ask them questions about how do I prep for an interview. Just remember, when you're asking them basic questions, everyone is doing the same thing. How are you going to be different? You realize you're reaching out to senior solution architect and a senior hiring managers, right? So you want to stand out and be different yourself. Okay?